Hey, what's up guys, TechTime here and I'm back again with a brand new video. So before watching this video, if this is your first time on the channel, don't make it your last. Real quick also, I want to thank you all so much for the incredible support that you guys have shown lately. It means more than you think to me. So thank you all so much for supporting the channel. With that being said, today we're going to be doing the 4-month review of the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 and see if this is worth it right now with all this competition that's going on. So beginning with the design, this phone is made out of plastic all the way around, so it does have a plastic back. The glass obviously is in the front with the display, but it does have this kind of subtle curvature to it all around the phone. And you'll basically notice that all around the phone. Now it is like a subtle curvature all around to help with the grip, to help with the way this phone looks and feel. But yeah, I mean, that's just a part of its design and it looks nice, it looks decent. So the back also has your dual camera setup, which we will definitely cover, but the main sensor is 50 megapixels. And yeah, overall though, as far as looks go, it doesn't look half bad. It definitely follows the Motorola formula, basically very similar to their Moto G 5G, to their Moto G Power, things like that, to even their Moto G Play. So a very familiar Motorola design. As far as your ports go, on the bottom you do have a couple of ports. First of all, you do have a headphone jack in 2023 or late 2023 pushing to 2024. So if you still use a headphone jack, you have it on here. And it also has your USB-C that does support up to 20 watt of wired charging, so there's still no wireless charging in these phones, but that's okay. 20 watts is plenty for a lot of people. You also get your bottom microphone as well as your bottom facing speaker, and of course you can't forget about the star of the show, the Stylus, which we will definitely cover later on. So getting back to the point of the curvature, I just want to go ahead and stress that a little bit more. So the main purpose of having these curves, in my opinion, is to help provide with the grip, so you'll definitely get a better grip with the phone. But if you also notice the camera lenses themselves, the cover glass around them is also has this kind of subtle curve to it. So also, if you look at the right hand side, you do get your fingerprint sensor as well as your volume up and down. Now I have to say this about these buttons, they're not really the most tactile buttons in the world, but they work fairly well. They just do what they do what they're supposed to do. I'll tell you that. They're not the most tactile, they are built out of plastic, but that's okay in my opinion. They work. And the camera lenses on here, they do protrude ever so slightly. It's nothing crazy like you'll see in a lot of phones nowadays, but there's like this subtle protrusion, so it will not sit on a flat table and not rock back and forth. So overall though, as far as the design aspect goes, it's pretty decent, you know what I mean? It's not going to be the greatest design in the world, but it works, it's subtle, it does what it's supposed to do. The curves help with the grip, although I do recommend the case because this phone is still slippery at the end of the day, but as a design package, not too shabby from Motorola. Hopefully next generation we'll see a kind of more improved design aspect. Alright, so now let's go ahead and flip the switch and talk about the display of the phone. So this phone has a big display, so it's a 6.6 inches 2400 by 1080p. It is IPS LCD panel. It does support 120 Hz. It does have 87.5% screen to body ratio. So listen, as far as the display goes from a kind of quality standpoint, yeah, it's not OLED, which is cool, I understand. I mean, at the end of the day, this still falls in the mid-range of phones, so it doesn't really need to support OLED, but it does support a really nice quality display of IPS. So the color aspects, they do look good. As far as sharpness, 1080p is plenty. I know some people may like 2K display, but honestly, if you put a 2K display and a 1080p display side by side, it'll be hard to tell the difference. Which means this, so watching videos and browsing the web and doing what you do on your phone, like browsing through social media, consuming content, things like that, it still is an enjoyable experience, especially with the size of this phone. The bezels are not really as big as other phones, so they are shrink down to a minimum, to as much as they could. But yeah, the overall display experience have been wonderful in my opinion. It's not going to be the greatest display, but it works really well. So watching videos, like I said, browsing the web, things like that, they work well. As far as the speaker goes, the speaker is also loud and crisp, so a very good speaker. Here, take a listen. Protrusion is at an all-time high. So if we look at our buttons, so on the right hand side you have your power button / fingerprint, as well as your volume up and down. Now I do have to say this, the power / fingerprint sensor is really smaller than the average power / fingerprint sensor that I've seen in phones, and the volume up and down are not as clicky or as tactile, so Motorola did cheap out a little bit on that. And one complaint that I have about it is that the buttons are placed higher than normal. Before I wrap up the display portion of this video, I do want to mention this. So if you go to the display settings, there are things that you can control, such as your color temperature, the way that you want the phone to, feel, whether you want it in natural mode, saturated, the warmth, whether you want it in a cool temperature or like a warm temperature. So you can control a couple of things in the setting. I like to keep it in its neutral form. I think it's fine the way it is. I don't really want to mess too much around in the settings. And you can also control the refresh rate if you want, whether you want the high refresh rate always on, which I would recommend if you really want to take advantage and enjoy the experience of the phone, but just keep in mind that it will kill your battery life. Needless to say, the battery life on this phone for the most part has been excellent. So yeah, we're going to talk about that in the performance aspect of the phone. So now I want to shift the conversation to the dual camera setup. So you get a main sensor of 50 megapixels at f1.8 aperture, and you also get an 8 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide sensor. In addition to that, you also get HDR photos. You also get a ability to record 4K videos at 30 frames per second, which we will take a look at, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second. But mind you that you will not get image stabilization if you record 4K at 30 frames per second. The front-facing camera is 16 megapixels at 2.5 at f2.5, and you also get recording ability up to 1080p. Now my overall kind of impressions of the camera is this. The way that this phone takes pictures is really quick, really fast, and it does a good job in that regard. The camera app is as simple as you can get, so get a thumbs up from that. Nothing really too complex or too complicated. So when it comes to the image quality itself, I have to say this. While this phone takes decent pictures overall, I'm afraid that when it comes to the competition, you have the S23 FE, you have their higher end Moto Razr, you have the Google Pixel devices. It's just a lot more competition out there that makes this camera not up to par. Even though, like I said, overall it takes decent pictures. When it comes to video quality, it's fine. The autofocus on here works fairly well for the most part, and the quality is not too shabby. Here, I want you to listen to the audio quality of the microphone from the video camera. Zoom, but it will not let you change between lenses from the standard lens to the wide angle lens, which is alright. A lot of phones do that anyway, but image quality seems to be a little bit it's okay. It's not the greatest, but for the most part it works. The colors they're a little bit saturated, so I'll give them that. Alright, so that's your test. So my next topic of conversation will be the specs department. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the performance. As far as your specs go, here's what you have. You do get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 based on a 4nm architecture. It's an octa-core processor, the Adreno 600 for GPU, a standard storage of 128GB of storage, and 6GB of RAM. They do have a 256GB option if you want to upgrade that storage, but 128 is going to be plenty for a lot of people. My overall performance is that when it comes to the daily tasks, it's solid. When it comes to gaming and things like that, it works well. It did get a little bit warm to the touch, but nothing too crazy. And you also do have a couple of options when it comes to the gaming. If you are gaming, it does have like this kind of game mode that will make you can make the decision yourself whether you want high performance, standard, or kind of battery saver, which will limit the performance when it comes to gaming. But yeah, overall the experience itself is enjoyable. Gaming on here is not too shabby, so I don't think a lot of people will be disappointed, especially because this is a 6.6-inch display. Cool. So again, browsing the webs, doing your daily tasks, and browsing through social media works really well. Now, one other word about the battery life is this. So most phones nowadays that are in I would say the higher price point, they would have shrunk down the battery from 5,000 to kind of 42 or 4,400 to include wireless charging, which means that this phone does not have wireless charging. However, I would say that that's fine with me. You get a 20-watt fast charging through USB-C, and you also get a better battery life than the phones that do support wireless charging. So it's up to you to decide whether that's better for you or not, but to me, I'll take that any day of the week. Okay, so the Geekbench gave me a score of a single core of 946 versus the multi-core of 2762, which is on par of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 processor. It's again at the end of the day between a low to mid-range processor. It works fairly well. Only time will really tell how good of a processor it would be. So now let's talk about the star of the show, which is the ability of the stylus. So the stylus, as far as the design, it didn't really change from previous generation. It looks pretty much exactly the same. It is, I would say that because it's made out of metal, it is on the heavier side, but that also helps out with the grip of the stylus. It's very thin. But when it comes to the usability, it's just as good as previous generation. To be honest, I mean, not much has changed. You can do things like sign documents, jot down quick notes, draw pictures, or take a photo, and then just put your own art to it. So there are a lot of possibilities with the stylus. Take screenshots, take GIF videos, and things like that. You can even do searches with the stylus, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, whether you want to use it or not, that's completely up to you and your needs. So the stylus is an optional tool that you have if you need it. I used it a couple of times, but to be honest, for the most part, I forgot it was there. But again, it's a tool. It's there if you need it. Alright, cool. So next up, I want to give you guys my conclusion on this phone 4 months later. It was overall an enjoyable experience. Everything on this phone worked for the most part well. However, unfortunately for Motorola, I don't think they've done enough changes to justify you buying this phone over other devices on the market, right? So the market right now is super competitive, so Motorola has to figure out a way to make this device stand out a little bit more. Yeah, the addition of the stylus is cool and all, but I feel like there needs to be just a little bit more of a wow factor to kind of attract the attention of the customer. But with that being said, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the overall of this phone. If you have it, do you love it? If you have it, do you hate it? If you don't have it, would you consider it? So with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all my supporters, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you all for watching.